ora, welcome, no mai haere mai. Welcome to the Pathway 4 Lunchtime Learning, hosted by the wonderful SASS crew, SASS Collective. Just wait for another minute or so for a few others to join. But in the meantime, while you're all waiting so patiently, and I don't have tunes in the background to welcome you all in, would love for you to, those of you that have been here before will know the drill, but would love for you to pop your name, where you're zooming in from, and what system you're hoping to shift in the chat. And we'll get started very shortly. So your name, your Zoom location, and what system you're hoping to shift or change working in this space. So lovely to see some friendly, familiar faces. Kia ora, April. Give you a moment to do that. Yeah, popping your name, your location, and what system are you hoping to shift in the chat. At about, and I might just go to sharing my screen. Continue to pop it in the chat, and Lotale and Storm will definitely pick it up. Oh, they're all coming through. Oh, and Jim. Wonderful. Okay, let us get started. No mai haere mai, and welcome to this Pathway 4 Lunchtime Learning webinar with the wonderful Alice, Connie, and Cyril. So, which we'll be introducing very shortly to you all. Really appreciate you joining. This is not the second webinar, it's the fourth webinar of our Lunch and Learn series. And this one is around Pathway 4, Overcoming Funding and Bureaucracy Challenges. So for those of you that don't know me, kia ora koutou, ko Jade toko ingoa he tangata tiriti aho. I'm zooming in from Onekiritia, Hobsonville Point, and I am I wear lots of different hats, but I'm a proud member of the SASS Collective as well, which is all around systems change, solidarity and support of those that are working in this space. But before we get started a bit more and tell you a bit more about SASS and about our wonderful esteemed panelists today, start us off with a karakia. Me karakia tātou. Ko te kawa o runga, ko te kawa o raro, ko te kawa ora, ko te kawa ora. E rongo e whakaerihia ki runga, turuturu whi te whakamaua ki a tīna, tīna, huie, taiki. Awesome. It's nice to see some friendly, familiar faces, but those that are joining for the first time, what is happening today? We open with a karakia, bit of a welcome. Definitely still feel free to pop your name, location, and the system that you're hoping to shift or change in the chat. We'll share a little bit about SASS, as well as some of the members and the non-white paper that we launched last year. And we'll introduce our incredibly inspiring panel speakers. And then we'll jump into their kōrero and some questions for them as well around overcoming funding, and with a focus of overcoming funding and bureaucracy challenges. We'll wrap up usually around 12:50 or 12:55 and just share our final webinar for the year and any questions that you might have as well. So keep your thinking brains on around what you want to know from these wonderful humans. And then we'll wrap up and close ideally before 1. They have to disappear for another masterclass, but that's okay. How the Zoom kōrero is going to work. This webinar will be recorded. We had about 80 to 90 people that registered for the webinar. Some of them can't make it along today, so we'll record this and they can watch it at a later time, along with a slide deck and any upcoming webinars that we might have. Please keep yourself on mute if you're not chatting or asking questions. Please use the chat function to comment or just tautoko your wonderful speakers as well. And if you're not eating lunch, even if you are eating lunch, we'd love to see your smiling faces. So turn your video on if you feel comfortable. And as I mentioned before, please pop your name, your location, and what system you're hoping to shift or change in the chat. Awesome. So we've got some amazing humans in the room, but also amazing humans as part of the SASS collective. Our group, known as SASS, Systems Change Advocacy, Support and Solidarity, all experience hands-on community leaders from diverse backgrounds. We're all fiercely passionate about systems change mahi that is te tiriti-based, community-led, relationship-led, and collaborative as well. And we meet monthly to connect, support, and share learnings, resources, and wisdom. And what's working and what's not working, and what are we noticing in the broader sector as well. And we've got some wonderful SASS collective members here today. Don't know if you can pop your name up or like do a reaction so people can see as well. And I'm really excited and looking forward to spending, deep quality time with these wonderful wahine next week out at Waitangi as well. A bit about the paper. Hopefully you've come across this, but if you haven't, that's okay. Storm will put a link in the chat. But this was a gift, this non-white paper was a gift to everyone who's passionate about creating more equitable, inclusive, te tiriti-based Aotearoa, whether you work in system change or you support it, like our wonderful funders here today, coming from a funded perspective. The information in the paper has been organised into 5 key pathways with clear, clean, actionable steps for those who want to contribute to an inclusive and beautiful future here in Aotearoa. As mentioned before, this is a 4th pathway. We've had the enabling system change leadership back in July, strengthening relationship and working together. In August, we had addressing racism and bias and exclusion facilitated. So the pathway 2 was facilitated by Lotalia, pathway 3 facilitated by Anjum, around addressing racism, bias, and exclusion. And then today we are here to gather around here, learning more around overcoming funding and bureaucracy challenges. And then we've got pathway 5 next month. But what is pathway 4 all about? I won't read through this. I think there's some beautiful quotes that we heard when we're working and pulling together this non-white paper, but those that are working in it already know this, but leading systems change initiatives is a marathon and not a sprint. And the work can take a high toll on everyone involved. Some key insights that which again, I won't read through this whole slide, but for systems change practitioners, building an environment of collaboration rather than competing, especially when the funding pool is being stretched or at this moment in time, is really important to be able to really, center the community that we're designing with and for and with, and to reach more preferable, desirable futures. And how can we intentionally collaborate and form deeper relationships and more trusting relationships that move at the speed of trust, especially when you're working in system change initiatives, rather than compete for limited funding. Those that are interested for supporting and funders and other supporters of systems change, there's an element of like changing the system out there, and there's a saying that once heard that you can't have climate change without system change. You can't have system change without understanding that you are also part of the system. So having that reflexive and reflective practice around what is the system, who are you within that system, where are the power dynamics at play as well, and how do you change your internal organizational systems to become a leader in effective and equitable funding in this space as well, to enable system change. So introducing our speakers for today, Alice, Connie, and Cyril. Let me just bring up their wonderful bios. Hold on a second. I'll stop sharing the screen so I can read their beautiful bios. Alice. So Alice first up. Alice's experiences spans roles in Australia, New Zealand, and the UK across a range of high-profile organisations such as Red Cross, Experience Wellington, Creative New Zealand, and most recently as a role of Executive Director at the Tindall Foundation. She is now the CEO of the Clare Foundation, and both Clare and Weave, part of Weave Collective, have been a great supporter of SASS. So just want to mihi to you, Alice, for your incredible support there. Alice's extensive breadth of experience is ideal for Clare's proactive, progressive approach. Next up, we have Connie, who's a dear friend and ex-colleague of mine at Foundation North. Connie joined Foundation North in May 2016 and was most recently Community Advisor for the Department of Internal Affairs. She brings a wealth of experience having worked both in the public and private sector. Connie is well connected to a community on the shore through various committee roles and an avid badminton player. I'm trying to encourage my daughter to play badminton as well. Born and raised in Auckland, she graduated from Auckland University with both a bachelor's degree and a postgrad diploma in science. Connie is fluent in English and Cantonese and currently learning Mandarin, and she is currently the strategic projects lead at Foundation North, and she's got amazing examples and case studies to share with you in a little bit. And then Cyril, who I think I initially met at the Foundation North reception as well, but is actually with the Tindall Foundation at the moment. Cyril started his role at Tindall Foundation in June 2018. He's very humbled to be part of the whānau to contribute to the work of the Tindall Foundation across Aotearoa. He'll share a bit more about his whakapapa and his iwi and hapu connections when he shares. But has over 20 years experience in the community development and funding space, again working for the DIA for 13 years across different business units, then Foundation North, and currently has a few kind of governance roles: Māori Advisory Committee for Philanthropy New Zealand, Chair of Emergency Housing and Budgeting Services in the Mount Roskill South area. He is very passionate about his service to community and the natural world, and hope that future generations will live a clean, green Aotearoa. And this is my favourite part. But he also hopes that the Warriors will win the NRL in his lifetime as well. So, Mauri ora. I will jump back into sharing the slides and hand over to Alice first up. Okay. You see, here we are. Over to you, Alice.
Tēnā koutou katoa, no ingarangi yoku tupuna, he tangata tiriti au, kei muritai au he noho ana ko Alice Montague au. No reira tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora. It's wonderful to see you all online and see so many familiar faces. I'm Alice, and I'm originally from the UK. On the map, you can see the little dot where I am from, a place called Norwich, in the east of the country, a small city which I couldn't wait to escape when I was growing up. Famous for its Coleman's mustard, Delia Smith, and now we can claim Olivia Colman. So that's where I grew up and spent most of my life. And I now live in the beautiful Muritai in Te Whanganui-a-Tara. And I think my journey to working in philanthropy, I have worked in the not-for-profit sector for a very long time. I had a short stint at Creative New Zealand, but apart from that, I've been in the not-for-profit sector all my life. And for a long time, I worked in fundraising. And I think that when you have been on the other side of the fence for a long time, you have a good understanding of how confusing and complex philanthropy can seem, and how difficult it is to apply for funding and know whether you're going to be successful or not. So it's always been something that I've held close to my heart, about kind of acknowledging those challenges and thinking about how we can make it not so difficult for people when they engage with us going forward. Can I go to the next slide? So I've been at Clare Foundation now for just over 2 years. We are a progressive spend-down foundation. It's only existed for maybe 3.5 years, and we tend to exist just for 10 years. So probably about a quarter of a third way up through our journey. We call ourselves a progressive foundation that is focused on creating transformative change across 4 key strategic PO: amplifying opportunities for women, youth well-being, oral health, and the environment. And these were the 4 areas that my extraordinary founder felt very passionate about. We are a team of only women, and we think that that's in part a kind of superpower for being able to think very much intuitively about how we work, and holds that close. And we fund across the country, and we fund quite a wide range of initiatives, being focused on systems change. And I'm sure we'll talk about what that means to us and how we kind of define that more later. But we are, really looking for things that can, create that change. Not necessarily, enormous change at that kind of necessarily advocacy level all the time, but, very conscious about working with communities as well to think about how they can create long-term change as well. So, nō reira, kia ora, it's lovely to be here.
Lovely to have you here as well. And Norwich, I have a dear friend whose auntie is Delia Smith, and I hadn't heard about Norwich before, but supposedly she owns shares in the football club, and my husband is obsessed with football. Anyway, that is a slight distraction. Over to you, Connie. I would love to hear a bit more about you and the amazing mahi that you're doing at Foundation North.
The funding type for you. Well,
and B, could you please mute? That would be awesome. I don't have co-hosting rights, so I can't mute her. So over to you, Connie. Maybe you need to unmute.
Ko kia ora koutou. Ko Hong Kong rau ko Macau te whakapāparanga mai. Inari, I mbana mai au Tamakira Makaurau. Ko rangatoto te moa. Ko Popoki te roto. He takapuna ana aho I noho ana. Ko Connie Lee aho. Kia ora everyone. My name's Connie. I am the Strategic Advisor here at Foundation North. And thank you, Jade, and the SASS team for inviting me to present today, and all the amazing mahi you guys are doing to strengthen our collective knowledge in systems change. I'm Connie. I'm born in New Zealand, but my parents are from Hong Kong and Macau. So very much a third culture kid here in New Zealand, but very, very, I guess I'm very, very privileged that my parents were very persistent in me speaking Cantonese at home. And now I'm fluent in it, so it's something that I'm looking to pass on to my daughter, because for me, language and culture is really interrelated, and it's really important to be strong in your identity. My work in Foundation North, I've got quite a broad portfolio, which includes leading out on our climate action plan, looking after some of the participatory grant making models, and also linking back to what I studied in is looking at some of the ways where we can increase funding to our regenerative environment strategy. But about Foundation North. So Foundation North is one of 12 community trusts in New Zealand. We have the vision to enhance lives, and we do this by mainly through our funding. the area that we fund in is Auckland and Northland. As a values-driven organisation, we have 4 strategic areas. Hey, do you mind? Thank you. Which are increased equity, social inclusion, regenerative environment, and community support. Overarching the strategies, you'll see our commitment to Te Tiriti o Waitangi and our climate action. It is a little bit small here, but our strategy and our theory of change are all on our websites. In this little swirl, the cool thing about that is it also highlights the priorities that we would like to support. We're really interested in initiatives that are led for and by our tangata whenua, Pacific peoples, former refugees, new migrants, people with disability, rainbow communities, communities in Northland and South Auckland, and young people and children as well. We've got 2 main funding pathways. One is our community granting stream, which everyone can apply for. The other one is our impact funding stream, which is a more of our proactive pathway where we can be more flexible and innovative in our approaches to supporting initiatives that create systems change. We've also, might be like 5 years ago now, changed the way we fund. A new team was created called the engagement team, which was probably which was the team that I was part of prior. The team is community focused, so they're place-based. We've got advisors based in Northland, South Auckland, and Central Auckland, and they're there to support community and actually bring in initiatives that seek to support climate action. Support systems change. Couple of other cool pieces of work that we're doing is we're exploring intermediaries. So our first intermediaries is actually with the Cyril Foundation and supporting rainbow community for and by rainbow community. Oh, and the next slide, thanks Jade. And these are just some photos of our lovely participatory grant making models. We've got the Pacific Youth Future Makers on the left, our Asian artist cohort on the middle, and Te Mahari Aotearoa on the right, which is our newest one based in Northland, and I can go through them a little bit later on. Lovely to meet you guys, and yeah, looking forward to the kōrero.
Amazing. Thank you, Connie. I love seeing you go from strength to strength and amazing projects and purposeful projects and system change projects and climate change projects that you're working on as well. It's always evolving in this space. I'm going to pass it over to Cyril now to share a bit about him and his mahi.
Tēnā koutou katoa ki te tangata e te hui topa nei, nā mihi ki a koutou. Ka mihi ki a koe Jade mō tō karakia ki tēnei hui, tēnā hui. No hokianga oku tūpuna, ko Ngāpui ko te rāroa oku iwi, ko Cyril Howard ahau, kei Tindall Foundation ahau mahi ana. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora everyone, nice to meet you all. I see some familiar faces and not so familiar faces, so ngā mihi kia koutou. I work for the Tindall Foundation, and I guess what I would say about us in terms of our founders, Stephen is definitely the figurehead. So Stephen Tindall is probably the figurehead, but the actual generosity of Margaret is the building blocks of this foundation. And so one thing that I always have in mind in terms of in the communities and when it comes to applications to mayor is that what would Margaret think? So that's sort of how we roll here. Our 3 key main poses around families with a particular focus on maternal wellbeing especially. Also around whānau delivery, whānau services of wraparound services. And community is another po, which is more around a whole of community approaches to taking community-led and supporting community-led solutions. And more taking
that. Oh, that would be awesome. Thank you so much.
And yeah, I've got a paper bag too. But and then that grassroots up approach in terms of supporting communities and also in the environment, which is more around climate change action and supporting that type of kaupapa, especially around transition from pine forest into native forest to mere. So we work along across those sort of streams. To be fair, in terms of my role as regional development manager, we have 3 focus regions that that the work and another colleague of mine that's here, Charlene Nautai, have a focus in 3 particular regions, and one in Taitokerau, Tairāwhiti, and Whanganui Horowhenua. My role is around engagement and support in Māori-led aspirations, especially in the housing, food resilience, taiao, Māori business, more at that community and marae level rather than sort of a founder approach, and around sort of addressing energy hardship, I guess. And then, yeah, working across hapu, sort of iwi, those types of things. To be fair, I would say we've moved sort of away from sort of a traditional model of funding where you put in an application, go through our system, and we say yes and no at the other end. To be fair, we're probably more, we are working more in a relational space. More than happy to take journey with organisations and where we might align strategically, but also in terms of supporting the well-being of communities in particular. I know that at the moment, you know, our communities around funding is a real major challenge. And yes, I mean, this particular kaupapa, overcoming funding and bureaucracy challenges, is very interesting in this particular time and environment that we're under. Honestly, we were quite oversubscribed, obviously, with the funding cuts into our communities, and also, I guess, yeah, it is a challenge for us, but we're very much connected to the relationships that we have, existing relationships, and trying to keep them above ground at the same time. But yeah, it's an interesting space to be operating in at this particular time. Around systems change, so yeah, we're very much in that around, especially around how we approach communities and how communities approach us. We're trying to flip the model in terms of this power, sort of shifting power in a way from us. And I think us as funders need to, the whole flipping of the model around, it's not about us trusting you. I think it's actually about the community trusting us. And I think that's something that we're really mindful of. And some of the collectives I'm connected to around, especially with Te Kahu Pūmanawa, which is sort of a philanthropy of Māori funders in this space, looking at how we can move away from this traditional modelling of funding that is actually out there. So yeah, we're looking at trying shifting in that space as well. I think we'll probably talk a bit more about that in the next couple of minutes. Kia ora.
Kia ora, tēnā koe, Cyril. And yeah, completely hear and tautoko what you're saying about the challenging funding situation or environment that we're in at the moment, whether it be at a philanthropic level, a local government level, a central government level, or beyond as well. It seems like there's lots of challenges across the board and across different levels too. Also really love what you mentioned about shifting power and getting the community to trust you as funders too. We're one of the tenets around systems thinking and system change is actually moving at the speed of trust as well. And that goes both ways. But really love that you acknowledge around community trusting you as opposed to you trusting community and flipping that. So if there's any urgent questions or part-time, please pop them in the chat, but we also have a few pre-prepared as well. And actually on that note of shifting power, do I watch it? No, okay. We'll go with the questions that were pre-described, and then I'll go back to the shifting power question, because I think there's some great examples around participatory grant making that that all three organizations can speak to. So let's start with why. Why is overcoming, I mean, it's quite obvious, but it's nice to be able to unpack what this might look like in your context. Why is overcoming funding and bureaucracy challenges important to you and your mahi and your particular foundation? Let's start with Alice. I might just stop sharing my screen so we can see your wonderful face.
Kia ora. Thank you, Jade. I should have said earlier that we're a proactive funder, which comes with benefits and disadvantages, especially when it comes to navigating those power dynamics and sharing that power and building trust. For us as a proactive funder, therefore, we don't have grants rounds. And so we're very much focused on building relationships, trying to take a high trust approach, and identify the kaupapa or the change makers that are doing work that is aligned to our 4 strategic PO, and then really working with them to identify what they need. And so as part of that, when we find that alignment, we will try and take away that kind of burden and bureaucracy as much as possible. So no one has to put in a funding proposal, for example. We will do all of that, and we'll try and work in a kind of partnership way. So we'll support them by trying to fund for the long term and unrestricted, and being very flexible. And I think that that's important to us in the world of systems change, because we are very conscious that change isn't linear. Change is complex, and we need to adapt and try and be nimble and support people or organizations in the way that works for them, to enable the best possible outcomes. And to do that, it needs trust, and it needs to be able to kind of build those relationships, so you can have those kind of honest conversations about what people need.
Yeah. Sorry, Alice, did you finish your thought there before I interrupted?
No, go for it.
I know, I hear what you said around change isn't linear, it's complex, and reminds you of this masterclass that we're running today around a VUCA world. The world that we're moving into, or we're experiencing at the moment, is VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. That actually there's a newer acronym post-COVID, which is BANI, so BANI. So the world is at the moment brittle, it's anxious, it's non-linear, as you alluded to before, and it's incomprehensible. So essentially in the futures world or systems world, is that you can't always predict the future, but how do you navigate through the uncertainty with a little bit more confidence as well?
Yeah. As part of that, we are we're definitely the open-minded ended when it comes to measuring impact, trying to identify what that looks like. We're not, we believe in a kind of iterative process and reflective practices, but we are quite open-minded about that idea, because we've very strongly believe that, like you were saying, people's well-being needs to be looked after, and the people working in our community organizations, especially now, we know the amount of pressure and stress that everybody is feeling, and how sadly underpaid and overworked most people are. So creating space by supporting in a way that hopefully creates a sense of abundance, can allow more of those solutions and thinking about systems to be able to come more to the fore.
Yes, and again, really much gratitude about you enabling us to create space to move into that, move away from scarcity mindset to abundant mindset. So thank you, Alice. Just thinking, Connie, why is overcoming funding and bureaucracy challenges important to you and your mahi? And I guess drawing from your experience of actually coming from government and actually working in, I guess, the community engagement team where there might be a lot more policies that play around what you and criteria around what you can and can't fund. And then now the space that you're playing in now around strategic initiatives and being able to lean more into, PGM or, participatory grant making or impact funding. I'd love for you to share a bit more about that.
I guess, yeah, for me, if I go back to kind of how did I get into the line of work, I think I was inspired by one of my lecturers who said you can't change the world or environment without changing people. And that really acknowledges that whilst all funders like Foundation, we have a strategy, but we acknowledge that we're not always the community that we want to reach. And so being led by community is something that's really important to us. It means that if we can create space to work in partnership, in relationship with community, provide a space where they can be creative and designing solutions to overcome problems, then we can be a part of it. How can we enable it and not do it alone? How can we bring other funders along the journey so as a collective we can awhi this initiative as much as possible in the impact space, where we do try to be quite flexible in terms of how we work with the I don't want to say organization, because we do find collectives as well. I guess it's an initiative. Reporting, a lot of times for us, it might look like a round table where we get together, have a conversation, rather than reading a document. As much as we love reading, the richness is through the conversation and the learnings. And very much taking an ACO mindset is, it's not about the, how many trees did you plant? It's about, how can we walk alongside this journey, because we believe in the vision of this initiative. We've kind of learned a lot from devolving power and how that has also impacted some of the work that we do internally. If we look at the Pacific Youth Future Makers, for example, they're rangatahi based in South Auckland, and when we started engaging with them, we knew that our funding structures, our language, our policies were all barriers to reaching the Pacific community. And when we let them lead, they decided to fund individuals, companies with charitable intent, entities or initiatives that weren't quite eligible or good fit with our mainstream funding. And that created a conversation internally. How can we be more flexible in funding some of these companies with charitable intent, and looking at how we can make sure that we are being more inclusive. So working in a way with communities means that it is, like Alice said, takes a real reflective approach on how we do things as well. Yeah.
Love that, Connie. Yeah, practicing what you preach around devolving that power and actually being community-led or rangatahi-led, being part of the solution or enabling the solution and the communities that come up with the solutions, and then actually bringing funders around the table to be able to awhi and support that. That's a great example of overcoming funding and bureaucracy challenges. So thank you. Over to you, Cyril. And you know that you have a wealth of experience in this space, regardless of, obviously we're in the Tindall Foundation hat now, but across the years, why is this important to you and your mahi?
Sorry, I just forgot to mention too, just as part of the Tindall Foundation, we have 24 local donation managers around the country.
Mm-hmm.
And we give them an annual budget as our way of supporting grassroots locally, and the spaces we tend to work on here at the Tindall Foundation, quite regional to national type projects. So I just wanted to add that into the mix. I think I have to probably just say that this particular piece of mahi, I guess, I'm the oldest in my whānau, so you obviously get brought up by your grandparents back in the day. And, you know, one of the things I think, and you reflect on these things as you get older, I guess, you know, you take pathways that sort of, yeah, you go one pathway, well, you get to a point in your life where you're either going to go this way or you're going to go that way, right? But I think my reflection is really being involved in this type of mahi has come from my grandparents around their service to community. So I see this role as that, in that way. But, and so I've worked in the community sector. I've applied to keep myself into a job in terms of, and I'm now a chair of a board that I've been on since I've been trying to get off for 30 years. I know. Where I work for at the coalface of community. And, you know, when you start working in communities and you think you know communities until you open the doors, you actually don't know much about your community. And I think that was really quite light bulb moment for me. And then having the opportunities to sit on sort of COGS committees, you know, and then entering into DIA under that governance type thing and the mahi that they're doing, getting involved into, and I think, you know, I don't know what all the other government agencies are, but I think DIA's sort of is quite more towards that community navigation space, and I think that's and that's where a lot of us that are, you'll find in the philanthropic space, a lot of us that come from the DIA background that are actually in this space now. And then, so I was 13 years there and then into Foundation North. And Foundation North, you know, having political appointments to the committee, to the trust boards, and depending who's in power of the day, they'll have this sliding scale of people coming through. And so, yeah, and that's quite a challenge in itself. And you know, and I acknowledge challenges that Connie has within the organisation and that as well. And then coming to a foundation, I think that is actually a lot more aligned to my values. And I guess, what shall I say? And they're up for the challenge in that as well, in terms of, especially around their Te Ao Māori, and moving around in this space, and then wanting to lean more into Māori-led aspirations. You know, because our people aspire, you know, and there's some beautiful leaders and that amongst our communities, and where I see our role is just sitting alongside. You know, we're not here to tell you what you need to do. You know what the solutions are, and then try and power that up in some way or another. And then bringing other collaborations of funders. So regularly working with the Todd Foundations, J.R. McKenzie's, and bringing them into these spaces, and they're bringing us in and working collaboratively. And what that looks like is actual fact, like one application to all 5 of us, and then the community actually deciding how they wish to report back. You know, that can be video, that can be wānanga, that can be. So I guess when we talk about shifting or trying to change the landscape, we're doing it, funders are doing it in pockets, but over time we'd like to think this is just going to be a normal way of doing things. And the more we can do it in communities and across the motu, across Aotearoa, you know, we're hoping that over time this will just become normal. You saw through the COVID experiences where funders were collaborating and money was going out the door very quickly. Government were fantastic. They were responding and dumping money, but as soon as COVID started to fall back, then all of a sudden the gates started shutting again, and we're going back into our normal ways of funding. So we've been trying to keep this our way of collaborative funding going, and trying to ease the pain from community of having to do this administration stuff. You know, you're working at the coalface, and we're sitting in our offices, and we're in Takapuna. You know, you're working at it every day, and then you have this funder burdensome paperwork that's, you know, and you're under contract, and you got to do the widgets and all this. So we're trying to really, get away from that, and move away from this traditional stuff into more relational stuff, and just letting you get on and do the mahi. And it sounds nice, but at the end of the day, it's what you do, right? So we can all have the flash strategies. We can all say, oh, we're going to, do this, do that. But at the end of the day, it's what you actually do, I think. And that's where the community can judge you in terms of you're responsive to their particular kaupapa and them leading it. Anyway, you need to cut me off because I'll start talking too much.
I love that, Cyril. Yeah, and love the relational approach to funding. And actually, I was just thinking often when I was previously a funding position, we ask community groups to always collaborate, but I wasn't seeing great collaboration across the funders. So great to hear that you are working collaboratively and to have, the one application that's shared across all the funders as opposed to, 5 different applications. That's a great example. And like you said, it's, it's easy to, it's not what you say and not what the strategies say, it's what you do with that and how you put it into action. Actually, the time always flies. And so if there's any partai, please feel free to pop it. Oh, yes, thank you, Storm. Feel free to pop it in the chat. But we might get the panelists to choose which one they answer. And maybe start with you, Connie. Love to hear your hope for the future around how we overcome all these challenges or work more collaboratively. Or is there one piece of good advice that you'd like to leave this community today?
Or can I cover off twice?
You can totally cover us both of them if you want. Yeah.
I guess when working with funders that are in the systems change space, understand what else they can offer other than funding. It might be a funding plus model. Is there opportunities to fund in terms of the capability? Can we help with convening HUIs? What else do you guys need to shift that we can offer beyond the funding? And the second one would be when thinking about systems change is underpinning systems change with Te Tiriti. I feel that's really, really important. My hope for the future, maybe it is more for the philanthropic sector, is to see more young, diverse people coming through. Yeah.
Love that, Connie. Very nice and succinct. But yeah, very important. Just want to tautoko you mentioned around underpinning systems change by Te Tiriti. So thank you. I'm going to pass back to you, Howard, and then we'll close off the formal questions with Alice. But what does hope look like for you in the future of the funding space, or any advice around, grassroots systems change initiatives and from a funder's perspective? He's thinking. Do you want to go first, Cyril, or should I pass it over to Alice?
Are you still thinking, Alice? No. I think I sort of made my point. It's really about us sort of gearing ourselves up to be more responsive to community, eh? And I think, when community are also reaching out, I think it's worthwhile having those conversations with us. We're looking at approaching this organization, to enable us to come together. And I think with like-minded people, and funders can be the pain in this stuff. We can create these silos, and we fund this group but don't fund that group, But getting us all into the same room and even not. We always talk about these expectations. Raising expectations in community. Well, at the end of the day, that's your job, right? And you either can fund or you can't fund. And the honest truth about the relational component of that is actually telling the truth. Actually, it's not in our lane. But the most important thing is that we have someone else for you to go to. And if we can do that, then I think that's great. But I think we've got a lot of sorting out to do amongst us as funders to be more responsive to communities. And that's what I'd like to think in some way, over time, it will become normal that we will fund in a way that's collaborative and is responsive to the community. And you can just get on and do your mahi. And that's built on relationships with high trust. And we can only do that, you know, like when you meet your wife or husband or whatever, for the first time, we go on a journey and we have a few, you know, here or there. And that's just reality, you know, that's what a relationship's all about. So we're open to, you know, feedback and honest feedback too as well. So cool. Kia ora. Once again, I don't want to talk too much.
I love the kōrero, Cyril. Yeah, again, if you have any partai, feel free to pop it in the chat. We've probably got time for a couple. But Alice, what about you? Any words of wisdom, advice, or hope for the future?
I love those thoughts there, Cyril and Connie, and really resonate with that. I think that, you know, there's such a breadth of philanthropic foundations or trusts across the motu, and they will have very different processes and abilities to be flexible. And I think we are very conscious of our place within the system and of the ones that do have the ability to be a little bit more flexible and to collaborate and to try and make things easy, to do as much of that as possible, so that we can, you know, maybe influence from within the system as well. And I think you're right. You know, we want to be better funders, and we're always learning and developing and thinking about how we can improve. And, you know, we do a little bit of participatory grant making, for example. I think we'll do a lot more in that space. And, you know, we will fund more of these, you know, like you mentioned, kind of people coming together, and, you know, those networks and collaborations and creating the space and the opportunity for people to have the time and the resources and the space to, you know, be able to work together and have these kind of systems change conversations. So we are also very conscious of that. I think my hope for the future, which is very linked, is around people. I am very excited by the collaborations and the conversations that are taking place with groups like SASS. You know, their mahi is awesome. That report is phenomenal. And I'm, you know, hearing and learning so much more about, you know, the need for addressing, you know, collective trauma healing and thinking about healing systems change and thinking about how, you know, we can learn more and think about some Indigenous frameworks like Haumanu and kind of bring that into our mahi. And I think knowing that those conversations are happening here in Aotearoa and across the world is really quite exciting, and that gives me hope. Yeah.
Beautiful,
Can I just add a
Alice.
point?
Oh,
Sorry,
yes, yeah.
Jade.
Sure, you go.
I can just add something as well. I think that word philanthropy as well, I think this is another system change we're trying to attack, is that word philanthropy is quite exclusive. So, you know, if we can break that down and sort of say, hey, look, what's the context in Aotearoa? It's around generosity. And so that then makes it more inclusive for other communities, and especially Indigenous, of way of giving, right? And it's quite an exclusive group, because I think, that's another system change we're trying to change within the system, is about this word philanthropy. Man, there's some really powerful questions in there. If we had another hour, we could probably deal with a lot of them, but there's pretty cool stuff in there.
Yeah, some great questions. I'm going to try merge 3 of them into one, and I love the framing around philanthropy to generosity as well. But in Cyril, you've been in this industry for what, past 20 years. Can you offer any hope in the level of funding available in the sector in the coming years? Are there secretly more wealthy people coming together in Aotearoa for system change? Do you know of any, and do we need to grow that somehow?
I don't know. Well, I mean, there's quite a large sort of gathering of philanthropic foundations that sit within this. Is there? I think where the next pipeline is actually the next generation of wealthy whānau. and is actually around their journey into their way of giving. And within Tindall, we do have a Next Gen Fund that has a focus on creative arts, especially for Māori and Pacifica. They're in that point where over time, the reins are going to be, that there's going to be a changeover, right? And so what we're trying to do is really, I guess, what is that next generation going to look like? What is the world that they're entering to? In actual fact, the views are going to shift. So there's going to be a change in the way, I think, things will be done in future when the next generation arrive on the horizon. And it feels like all these foundations were all sort of joined up at the same time. So it feels like the next gens are starting to move into the spaces. Now, we've got one sibling on the board and two in our operations. So you know, in the Tindall succession planning is already in action. Sorry, kia ora. Does that help?
Kia ora, that was amazing. Mindful of time, we've got a couple of minutes and we've still got a couple more slides. Any final words of wisdoms or thoughts from you, Connie? And then we'll end with Alice and then we'll jump to the closing karakia.
No, nothing from me, Jade. Just want to talk about what Alice and Cyril has said about the sector, and yeah, it's quite encouraging that we're all on the same page as three funders, and we acknowledge our where we can do better, but also the opportunities to work closer together. So cool.
Kia ora, Connie. Very encouraging to hear this. Alice, you can respond to any other questions or just end with your wonderful words of wisdom before we wrap up today.
These questions are all amazing, but I don't think I have time to answer them. But maybe we can do that.
Okay, we can. Yeah, that's it. You pick one to answer, and then if we go a minute or two over, that's completely fine. If people need to drop off, they need to drop off.
Yeah, I mean, there's one about longer term funding, in which I know comes up a lot, and there's a real kind of bugbear. I mean, we have got some, we've got a 7-year or 5-year funding agreement because we're a spend down foundation. But I think that's, you know, I think that's happening more and more. And I think that especially with, it's easier for some foundations over than others. And I think there is a real kind of desire to do more of that and an understanding of how important it is to do long-term, unrestricted funding and funding fully when you can.
Awesome. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me go back to sharing slides or multitasking. Some wonderful part-time questions as mentioned in the chat as well. We'll follow up with the links or the recording to today's Kaikōrero as well. But friendly reminder, we've got our final lunchtime learning coming up next month, facilitated by the wonderful Aotearoa. And just really appreciate you all making the time during your lunchtime to come along and listen, engage, and ask some really poignant part-time questions. So let us close today. Me karakia tātou. Ka whakaaria te tapu kia wātea ai te ara, kia turiki whakataha ai, kia turiki whakataha ai, haumie huie, taekie. Awesome. Ngā mihi nui. Thank you. Thank you so much, Cyril and Connie and Alice and everyone for being here as well.